Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News. You see, it's World War III report again. Me and William. And good evening, William. How are you doing
Hi.
tonight?
Miki and I are doing pretty good. She's warming up with her blanket after having her big gravy time.
William teaches me a lot. Not only with dogs, uh, but talking to him, and he's schooling me. I think he's my mentor, my teacher. And he says, "Yeah, I'm learning. I'm learning not to be so uh, uh, what so soft, William, for these terrorists. I don't know.
Well, you're getting more of a mental, emotional background of how these people feel and are acting and reacting, so it makes it more uh, more human to you. Okay, instead of being, this amorphous action that doesn't quite make sense. And if I teach you the background, then you can look at it and say, oh, that's why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, I'm going to jump in and what was out there today in the news. The Capitol police officer Brian Sicknick, he died January 7th, day after January 6th insurrection. They call insurrection. Although the District of Columbia's office and chief medical examiner determined he died of natural causes. This administration, as well as the mainstream media mob, have since spread endless misinformation, disinformation, claiming that Sicknick was beaten to death by MAGA protesters. Uh, and that's coming out in a lot of the videos. Um, so, um, what we're looking at is the D.C. courts shoot down 3 of 5 civil counts alleging Trump responsible for the death of this gentleman. Uh, they're one by one throwing everything out. Now, Trump has never been indicted for an insurrection, for these states to be taking him out under I think it's the 13th Amendment. I could be wrong. Um, it's either the third or the 13th, something, one of them. There's not enough. It says if a president, if, if it's if the president does an insurrection, then he must be impeached. Okay, well, he's not a sitting president. If you look at the details, folks, look at the details of what they're using to try to take him off the ballot. It won't stand because when they get it to the Supreme Court, they say he must be indicted as a sitting president. That's what's
Really?
Huh?
So an insurrection, it was written right after the Civil War, this law. So when they were thinking insurrection, they were thinking like Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee seceding from the Union and thereby going immediately to battle against the United States. That's what they consider an insurrection.
Yeah, and I mean, even the appeals court, the Supreme Courts, are now looking at Jack Smith. He's the one that's a lot of bringing this forward federally, and they're looking at they're considering the constitutionality of his appointment. Now, this has been put through the media very quietly, and this is something that everybody needs to know is they're looking at why they appointed him when he is a Trump hater. Normally, when you have a AG or a judge, a DA, or any of those, if you are have anything against the defendant, usually you recuse yourself. So, and they're not. These judges aren't even some of the ones sitting on the benches doing these trials say they don't like him, but they could be fair and honest. And see, that's where the Supreme Court has to be brought into this. and it's taken all the way to the appeals court. So Jack Smith um, is one that they're really looking at. As special counsel, he might be in trouble. Um, the U.S. Court of Appeals and District of Columbia Circuit advised counsels in Smith's a criminal case against Trump to be prepared during previous scheduled January 9th oral arguments to address issues raised in briefs filed by him. The court made an announcement after explosive uh, a brief filed by attorneys for the Attorney General Ed Meese. Now, we haven't heard about Ed Meese in a long time, William. When I heard that name, I went, whoa, where has he been? You know?
Yeah, he's the Attorney General for Ronald Reagan.
And he's now arguing that Jack Smith's appointment as special counsel is wrong. It's unconstitutional. And so the court must reject his prosecution against Trump. So Meese is stepping in and saying this isn't right. Um, so what are we going to see with Trump? Everybody knows they're going to be eventually throwing this out. What gets me is, and I'll get to it in a little bit, is well, no, I guess I can address it now. Is Epstein? I agree with Glenn Beck. I'm hearing circus music, you know, do 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 do, and it's like everybody watch what's going on with this Epstein thing, William, and and they're
Elly,
saying, now hold on a second because I want you to hear me out, and then I'll let you say something. Uh, we have heard this before, twice. Twice. This is the third time. Okay, we know that Dershowitz was part of it. We know that Clinton was part of it. We know Trump. But get this, Trump, it was 12 to 15 years ago, and he kicked him out. Kicked him out of all of his hotels, off Mar-a-Lago, called him a creep, called him a pedophile. And we keep hearing it over and over and over again. And I'm hearing this. I'm almost hearing Mary Had a Little Lamb in my head to go along with it because what is it they want us, and the mainstream media is all over it. Why? Well, you know what? There's something that the Democrats are doing that they want us, hey, let's pay attention to Epstein. I don't want to pay attention to Epstein. Everything they've said before. So now, what are they covering up? Is it the impeachment of Biden? Is it Hunter? Is it what are the Democrats doing that want us to watch the circus act of Epstein for the third time? Go ahead, William.
yeah, well, you have to keep in mind also that these are just logs. This doesn't mean they were actually involved with anybody on the island. They may have just been catching a hop. When I was in the Air Force, they put me in for the Air Force Cross, but they couldn't give it to me because it wasn't a time of open warfare and because I was not an officer. If I'd been an officer during time of peace, I could have got it. So they gave me the Air Force Achievement Award, and it's great. That's a nice award. But they felt a little bad about it, so they called over to the folks over that did air refueling, and they got me a hop. This wasn't something I wanted to do. This is something they felt like they should do, right? So they got me a hop. I jumped on a plane. I went clear across the United States. I got to see refuelings, all kinds of different stuff, right? And come home. Didn't cost me a penny. It was just, basically an attaboy. And all that crew, right? I was on the airplane with that crew, but I don't know anything about that crew. I don't know anything about the guy that was riding in the back that I was laying next to that was doing the refueling, right? I was just on the plane, so we were all on the flight log. All of our weights because you have to have a weight for each person. You have to have a weight for their baggage, and you have. So if they're just on a flight log, maybe they're going from an acquaintance says, "Hey, well, we're going from New York down to Miami. You can catch a ride with us, right? And we can enjoy the ride, have a chat, whatever." Well, now he's on that log with Epstein. Relationships don't start all in all at once. They happen over time, right? And just one innocent flight or something like that does not a monster make. They may have never even got to the island.
Yeah.
So you have to keep that in mind. The pilots' names, the crew chiefs' names. Maybe you have one of the guys that does maintenance going with you, so you can continue on doing some sort of maintenance check while it's on the ground when you're between flights, right? These are just workers. They're not doing anything wrong. They have no idea what's happening back there, and what the big money, the owner of the plane is really using it for. They're just flying people from one place to another, and they shouldn't be caught into the mix. So we don't know who those people are. Mm-hmm. And Dershowitz could be just another acquaintance.
Well, he said he was a lawyer. Why wouldn't a lawyer, after the, he said dozens of lawsuits against Epstein over the years. So he would have to ride on the airplane or ride with him, go places with him, meet up with him on many, many occasions. But you know, they even said Michael Jackson, and they have, to me, William, I start hearing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, we knew when they released the flight logs, they said all of this, and the media didn't touch it. And then now, all of a sudden, this now text and this his books are being opened, and here comes the media, and to me, they're just covering up something. They don't. To me, it's propaganda, because they want us to pay attention to Epstein all of a sudden, and not maybe the polls, maybe not what's going on in the Middle East. We don't know, and I'm digging to find out what they're doing, and I sent everybody I know out to look at what's being whispered at the Capitol. And you know, the other thing is this bomb scare. Now, this administration has said this is all a hoax. Well, I don't think it is. I think this is more of numbing us to bomb threats. And they said a lot of it was said that they were going to put it in a bag and set it next to an office or in the office. Doesn't that sound like Boston Marathon? And it's not just judges, it's public officials at various levels of government. There has been, oh boy, even Arkansas, Pulaski County got one, Massachusetts, uh, um, Kentucky. Let's see if I can find a list of the whole thing of where all this is happening. Now, with these nine capitals, and they don't even list Arkansas. And when I heard that, I said, where were we on the list? How come I didn't know about that? Similar threats led to lockdowns in Capitol buildings in Mississippi, Minnesota, where it was disrupted in the middle of oral arguments and forced to move the courtroom across the street, they say. Hawaii, Montana, Maine were evacuated due to bomb threats. Now, you know, William, the whole thing with this is, if it's a hoax, boy, this was an elaborate one, because who sent bomb threats to? And they said these threats went to aides, it went to judges, it went to AGs, it went to Capitol emails. Somebody, either a bunch of them got together and decided to do this to different places. I mean, even Hawaii. Um, to me, it's like, don't tell us all of this was a hoax. Not every single one of those were hoaxes. Now, when I called the AG here over it today, and I talked to her for a long time, she took it very serious. And she said she didn't believe it was a hoax because they knew things. And I said, what do you mean they knew things? And she said they knew of our scheduling and what we did on a daily basis. And I said, is there any other state that could kind of verify the same thing? And she told me, I think it was Montana. So I called out there because I got a friend out there, and I said, did you hear anything on this? And she gave me a better report than the office did. They said, well, they had two aides that got emails, and also the governor and the judges. So, William, who would has the time to hit up 9 states and send it to various people? This sounds like a group that did this, and maybe Washington D.C. because they don't even list themselves because they said the whole thing was a hoax. Uh, but D.C. They got at least 5 bomb threats to different entities in the government. To me, this is um, it's a warning that we got something happening. That is it going to be a capital or a judge's office or what are we going to see? What are we going to see when one of these actually do a bomb and it actually goes through? They go through with this.
So I don't want to disturb people, but almost everybody in the United States has a dossier written up on them by multiple intelligence agencies around the world. So the Mossad likely knows what you're doing, right, and where you're likely to be at. There's Arabic institution, maybe the ISI knows in Pakistan. Most of the Western intelligence agencies know all about each other. And so an Arabic guy someplace in the world could issue a fatwa to say, hey, we want chaos to be brought to bear on just the mechanics of the U.S. government with maybe some terror threats, a minor jihad. That information is going to get out, and those can be acted on pretty easily because the information already exists, right? It's already in their databases, and they can now use computers because of AI to model voices and stuff like that. So that stuff can be brought in or sent in. And if you really want to rattle people's bells, start telling them about their own family dynamics while you're at it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a soft terror. Now, who could do it? Well, if you wanted to distract people from something else, this is a way to do it, right? If you wanted to use it for a propaganda coup, you can use it for that. There's multiple uses for this sort of thing if it's orchestrated. So we shouldn't get too bound up on it. What we need to be concerned about is if they get enough publicity and whatnot, maybe they're going to want to take it to the next level.
Right. You're saying earlier if we give them attention, that it just ramps them up.
The best thing is to never say anything about it, period. Let everybody involved just kind of suck it up. Let them know this is why we're not going to publicize this, because terrorism doesn't happen all at once. It happens in steps.
Mm-hmm.
And if terrorism is about propaganda, right? It's about information. So if that doesn't happen, what's the use in doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's other people that say, on the other hand, well, if you don't give them information, it doesn't grow slowly. It automatically takes a big jump because they're going to want to get attention, so they're going to take an extra step so they get everybody's attention. So it's a balancing act. It's like, when you're a kid, you're right on the teeter-totter. Who's heavier, who's not heavier, where the balance is. Do I need to scoot in? Do I need to scoot out? That's what's going on, except for it's basically intelligence agencies or religious groups.
Yeah. I was thinking Antifa or some of these radicals that would do something like this. They could get enough people to send them in, because it would take a group to do this.
Yeah, it could just be a 501c3 orchestrating it. We don't know.
Yeah. Now, I was looking at what I seen coming out of Guam Air Force Base. And when I started reading the article, I was like, you know what? I think we've seen the ways of Ukraine not having air power. And when we're going to now have to protect Taiwan as we are getting closer, they've sent some F-15 Eagles fighters on Anderson, Air Force Base in Guam. And this is a big announcement by the Department of the Air Force. Now, this is a 36 wing, and they would need a new hangar and ramp up more space to accommodate the Singapore Eagles, they say. The new facilities is on over 200 acres, and over 3 to 7 years, it could also support U.S. and foreign units. And Guam was one that China was looking at. That's what caught my attention with this. Uh, so, William, I think that we are now looking at, we need to move more air power or drones, because that seems to be what is happening with the Ukraine war, what's happening in Iraq and Iran. Uh, it seems like we're moving to a air core, I guess you would say it, war, to where we're using more drones and these F-15 fighter jets to do the bombing, and less troops on the ground. Because when we looked at Ukraine, and we were looking at Israel, we're looking at Iraq, and then we're looking at over in Taiwan now. We aren't putting as many on the ground troops as we did, like with the Iraqi war. So I really think that Guam, maybe Okinawa. What about even the Azores, William? We don't hear about the Azores. It's a little itty bitty island out in the middle of nowhere. But we could even start building up bases there with air power.
So you want me to comment?
Yeah, because you always got great comments. Because I know I put stuff out there that I find out, and then you go, "Whoa, wait a minute! Whoa, Will, whoa, Millie, or whoa, Ellie."
Well, okay, let's talk about the F-15Gs. F-15Gs are not strike weapons for just any targets. Their job in the world is to shut down surface air missile sites, to make a pathway for all the other aircraft to move through. Okay, so they're called wild weasels. And when you want to send a message to the enemy, a message you can send them is, look, we're going to shut you down and come in regardless. Tough it out. That's a big message to the rival, right? So it can just be signal intelligence, signaling an enemy you're going to do something. Now, as far as buildups go, we've been maxing out what we have in Okinawa, and we're having to build up Guam. When you go into a battle space, remember, China has said that by, what was it, 2000, operations. So when you go and move into an area for operations, you don't want to just have a spot to place the airplane. You need to place to put the air crews. One airplane might be flown by 3 air crews in a day. We keep the aircraft up. We swap out the pilots.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have sustainment. They need to have chow halls. They have to have places to rest. They need to have places so that they can take care of their elimination. You have to have garbage dumps. It goes on and on. Fresh water, warm water, heat, air conditioning. You don't want these pilots stressed out. You want them to be the most functional you can possibly get them. So, you take good care of them. That takes infrastructure.
Yeah.
And if you want the enemy to stay quiet, right,
Mm-hmm.
to acquiesce, you build up in an area around it. So Okinawa is a very southern big island of Japan. Guam's out a little bit, okay? Well, we're building a new base at Tinian, right? And there's a base at Tinian, okay? But it used to go in tents. But now they're going to go in probably rework the runways so they can have the heavier aircraft, faster aircraft can land on. I think they have 4 runways. And they're just going to take care of all the logistics. Remember, you've heard in the past that war isn't about any one fight. If you think about it, it's about manufacturing power. It's about logistics. Logistics is real warfare. Everything else is a fight, right? So they're setting up so they have an aerial task force available depending on what the situation is. This gives our generals options. Doesn't mean they're going to use it, right? It just means it gives them options in certain arenas and situations. This may be a trying to de-escalate the situation rather than escalate it. This is the most effective use of military power is never have to use it in the first place. Well, you have to sometimes let the enemy know that, hey, we're not too happy with what you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that. Don't do that, and we might just stop you, right? That gets the enemy's attention.
Yeah.
This is language. It's expensive language, which makes it, actions are, people believe actions more than they believe words.
Yeah.
This is an action. This is a verifiable action. They can see it happening. All right. This is going to cost them a lot more money to counter. War is expenditure of assets and blood. It's treasure and blood.
And also history. I mean, because even like what we're going to get into next, if this whole thing with Taiwan, there's a history that goes back that people didn't even know about. They're just jumping in saying, we don't want the war, but they don't look at what leads to the wars, whether it's another country invading another country. And they,
well, Taiwan used to be like a southern island of China or of Japan, and China and Japan have been mortal enemies forever and ever.
Yeah.
Right.
And
but when the Chinese Republic couldn't stay on the mainland anymore, we in the United States were already on Okinawa, so it kind of split Taiwan off from Japanese control, if you will. And so it was a place that Chiang Kai-shek could go and maintain his government until he could get it strengthened up enough to go back to war on mainland China. That's what they were thinking at the time.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking about, well, we're going to do semiconductors and we're going to be one of the richest nations on the planet because we're going to be efficient and caring to our people. None of that existed at the time. That grew over time as they saw what MacArthur had done with Japan, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying, we should model ourselves prosperous Japan is becoming. So this is the history of the area, and the United States has been involved the entire time. This short history, the last 80 years, has been happening. We were in South Korea with the United Nations, slowing that down so that the entire peninsula didn't fall to the communists. This history happens around military warfare, whether it's active warfare or threatened warfare. The Cold War was threatened warfare. I was part of that. It was real.
Yeah.
There was a threat against, the Soviet Union. We made sure the Soviet Union knew that if they did anything on any day, they were going to bleed for it.
Yeah.
Right? And we wanted them to superheat their economy, right? So, but communists can't superheat their economy like Reagan did here in the United States. A lot of the wealth that we felt in the 90s up to the 2000s, that was because of wealth created by Reagan superheating our economy so that we could pay for the expansion of our military to threaten the Soviet Union. So by the time we got to Desert Storm and George Bush got the reins of power, we were the strongest military that had ever been created in the recorded history of the world, because Reagan had superheated our economy. So the prices of gas were easier to deal with. We had a lot more energy. There's lots of stuff. So when Gorbachev finally came over to the United States and went on a tour, we took him into our grocery stores. And they were stacked, with things to the ceiling in big crates above just where you reachable level items, right? They were warehouses of food. We had stuff falling out of the rafters, and he says, "Oh, this is just propaganda. You did this, right?" And they said, "No, get on an airplane, go anywhere in the United States and check it out.
Yeah.
We'll give you an air crew. You decide where to go and what you want to check out, where. We'll just take you there." And Gorbachev went to a number of places, just random, like he said he was going to do. And it was an oh my God moment for him.
Yeah.
They were in 2-hour, 3-hour lines just for bread and cheese. They had people drinking the antifreeze out of their, that was used to keep the military equipment from freezing up. All right? They were in a terrible situation. And so we pushed them to that level, right? And then we introduced culture.
Yeah.
And then look at, if you want to see where the Soviet Union really collapsed, look at, it's called the Moscow concert, Monsters of Rock. There's 1 million people there. The government doesn't even know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So you
true.
add the culture
That's very true.
that can't be, the culture that can't be stopped. You get the people to understand that there's a better way of life out there, and we'll show it to you right this minute, right?
Yeah.
And glasnost happened. People were able to read. They started to understand what Gorbachev was beginning to understand. And even Putin and his friends said, internally, probably, that, hey, we've got to get going this direction rather than that direction, or we're not going to be able to keep what we have.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he was.
And when
he was. And now what I understood from listening to Gorbachev and Putin's remarks was when he handed the torch over, that they wanted not to be so communist, to be a socialist, because it would attract more people from turning against them under the communist rule.
Well, it gave them more of a free market, and they realized free markets bring power.
Yeah.
The moment they realize free markets bring power and absolute top-down reign of the economy doesn't work as well as people adapting on the fly in their local situation, that economies grow much faster in that environment. And they said to themselves,
Yeah,
we've got to do this.
you know what
or
got me,
we're
William,
out.
was when Putin finally got set in, stone in power. He started kicking out bankers. He kicked out Soros. He kicked out quite a few uh, globalist and globalist bankers out of Russia, and said
Yeah,
they
and
weren't going to
he
have no
didn't
part
only
of
do
it.
that. He suppressed people that wanted to stay communist. He
That's
went to
right.
all the places around the country and said, we can't be communist anymore, and this is why.
Yeah.
This is why we can't do it the communist way anymore. We need to be in a situation where we can compete with this other monster that's growing.
Yeah.
We have to stay on the ladder of success, even though they're cutting the rungs out from underneath us as fast as we can climb.
Mm-hmm.
You have to climb it if you want to protect your country over time.
Yeah, and see, that's where the history of these wars is so important, because you can't just like they're doing with these protests. They have no clue of the history of the Palestinians, or even what has developed over time. Now, when we start hearing about this latest explosions in um Iran. The thing is, there was a top, I think, 3 to 5 gentlemen that they were going after, and these are leaders that were causing, and not only uh, uh, in charge of sending arms to these proxy groups. Some of them were in charge of the nuclear program. Some of them, all of them have got a history. And when they met in one place, like they were on like the second and third floors of this building that they hit. And so and this goes back to the history of, um, of Iran. And why do I say that? Because um, when they were looking at who did this, first they looked at Israel, then they looked at the United States. Well, I looked into the history of Iran and found out ISIS is a huge enemy of Iran. And that's something I didn't know. And so when I asked William about it today, I said, I didn't know ISIS had issues with Iran. So, William, I'm going to turn you loose on it, because, boy, you had a lot to say and very important info.
So the history is, it goes way back to Babylon, the Babylonian Empire, and it goes back to the Persian Empire. To a degree, it goes back to the Ottoman Empire. And all of these have been influenced by the Egyptian Empire, okay? So you have two big groups of Islamic beliefs, okay? There's not just one Islamic belief. There's different beliefs with respect to the Hadith and how you manage the relationship of your religion. So for Shiites, which are a minor group in Iran, they have 12 leaders, 12 religious, and they're not, it's a religious government, okay? So the religion actually controls how the government functions. And then you have the Sunnis. That's the majority of the Islamic faith, right? And they're in Arabia. They see themselves as Arabs. And when they look to the Persians over in, and Arabia is part of the old Babylonian Empire. When they look to Persia or Iran, they see the Persian Empire. They're on the other side of the Persian Gulf, right? They're supposed to stay over there. We're supposed to stay over here. There's a line between us and the other major powers. So you've got a border between Iraq and Iran, and it goes up until it hits Turkey. All right. Turkey was the Ottoman Empire. Iran was the Persian Empire. Arabia was the Babylonian Empire. After it was the Egyptian Empire. All right. And in the Babylonian Empire, or the Sunni, they have three leaders of their theocracies, and then they have families that govern different countries in that theocracy. All right. And so even though their governments are separate, their theocracy is the same through the Sunni religion. So when they start talking about their rule of law, it's the same in all the other countries, right? Because it's based on the Quran. And
Right.
so they all have that same. So you can travel around Arabia if you're Arabian, and you can fit in almost any society, right? If you're Muslim and you're Sunni, you can travel a lot. Well, now you've got these people over in Persia, right, Iran, that are a minor situation, and they're pushing Israel around, the great Sunni evil, and the United States, that took over when the English bowed out, right? The next great empire, and they're having more and better military operations and propaganda and terrorism and the whole bit. They're just doing better, right, than the Sunnis right now. So the Shiites are ascending, and the Sunnis feel like they're descending because they've had Shiite influences start to come into Iran, into Iraq, which pushed them down into Saudi Arabia and those areas. Luckily, they were able to take their military equipment with them, and so they formed this group called ISIS. And ISIS is trying its best to hold back the Persians, right, while trying to move the Iranians out of the region and get the United States to leave. But Persia is pushing too hard. Instead of getting the United States to leave, instead of getting the Israelis maybe to move back to the continent, that's what they call Europe, right, the continent. It's not their land. It's not Arabian land. Okay, so that's a European continent, whatever, right, for them. You have to do it with a continual slow pressure, right? You have to get the population to say, hey, I'm just doing better in the United States. I'm just doing better in Germany. I'm doing better in Poland. Maybe it's better than being here in Israel. And so then pretty soon people have two houses and they have dual citizenship because depending on the time of year, depends on where they're at. So they're there half the time, right? And then maybe you can get them to be there fourth of the time. It's a continual push.
Yeah.
All right. They all have their own intelligence. Well, when one faction, it could be Sunni Shiite, it could be Sunni Sufi, that's another branch of Islam. They don't want one group destroying all the work that they've done. This is a long march for them. They started in the 60s and bombings in the 70s in Germany and Munich. This has been a long slog, hard push for the Sunnis, and now you've got these latecomers right now that are Shiites. Now, if you're from Arabia and you look over to Persia or Iran, you see them as not being real Muslims. Yeah, they have the name. Yeah, they do Sharia. But they came from Zoroastrians. They worshiped fire. And maybe you see them as, well, they're two-thirds Zoroastrian, really, and a third committed Islam, right? They see them as a periphery to Islam, because you've got Mecca and Medina and Jerusalem all in Arabia, right? The holy places are in Arabia. They're not in Persia. And this Babylonian, Persian, Ottoman, Egyptian empires all affect each other. You remember, you have the Muslim Brotherhood. That was a think tank from the university in Cairo, Egypt, that made its way all the way through Egypt, and out of Egypt into all the other areas. And Saddam came from that Muslim Brotherhood. Gazan leadership comes from the Muslim Brotherhood. Actions that happened, that the revolution in '79, to go from the Shah to the mullahs in Iran, that was an action of the Muslim Brotherhood, okay? And the United States coming in to try to quell things going on is part of the Muslim Brotherhood reaction, right? So this all has history. What we see in a small part in time right now is really part of a huge, long push that, you know, 1 billion people are involved in. We know that there's about 1 billion Christians on earth, but there's 1 billion Muslims as well.
And you know, William, the thing is we're talking the long history of the two, and they have always been at war with each other. There's never been a time where they didn't have war over the centuries. Hundreds of years they have fought one another in the Middle East, and no one has ever interfered, interrupted, or put their foot in it until now, with this century, that we are now wanting to try to get them to get along. You know.
Yeah, that happened in the 19th century, when all of a sudden we were building up towards a world war. The English Empire needed more fuel and whatnot to drive their industry. We had the Industrial Revolution happen, remember? Now you have to have a lot more oil to even lubricate, let alone run the boilers to drive all these big steam engines.
Yeah. No, you know, the thing is, William, we didn't see anything until, and I asked you about this earlier because I know nothing about it. I didn't pay attention, and probably a lot of people didn't, until there was the Iran-Iraq war. Then we started seeing that there was something happening in the Middle East, and they weren't getting along, is how I remember it. So
there was a big 10-year war that nobody paid attention to in the United States between Iran and Iraq. All right, we're talking millions of men that died. Iran was throwing human waves at Iraq, and Iraq was having their military paid for part by Kuwait. I think the United States, Russia was selling them arms, right? Whatever it took to hold back the Iranians, because it's a Shiite Sunni thing at that point. And and Saddam thought this was great because it gave him more power, right? He was able to consolidate power over this. He's a megalomaniac warlord, and he was able to get all these people to fight because of the religion. How wonderful can that get? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
So the Ba'ath Party that had they were Muslim, but they were a little bit different type of Muslim, because they weren't just the group that wanted to get along with all the other Sunnis. They need to be Sunni and needed to be in leadership, right? They needed a little thing more. And so you had this minority ruling Iraq. So we didn't pay attention to all this until Iran decided to go and start sinking all the Iraqi ships that were sending oil out. So that's a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we have an
Yes.
oil issue going to the west. Then Kuwait says, well, we're funding this war for Iraq, and we want them to survive so that they can pay us back. Look, Iraq, you can use our ships. And then Iran said, well, hey, we can take care of that. And they commit the biggest sin of that you can commit in the world, and they sink the Kuwaiti ships, right? Well, the importance of the Kuwaiti ships is they weren't part of OPEC, the big oil cartel. So they were selling oil on the cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they took out those oil tankers, now all of a sudden the price of oil went up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the 78 oil embargo thing happen, right? Well, the United States didn't like that stuff. So we send in task groups, right? We're going to escort the Kuwaiti oil tankers. And Iran says, well, let's just double down. And they went and they mined out in international waters in the Gulf with big magnetic sea mines to blow up ships. Well, here comes one of our ships, right? Escorting a tanker, and kaboom, blows the hull, the keel out from underneath it. They barely were able to save the ship. They were able to get it to limp into, I think it was Dubai, and now we have a problem.
Yeah.
Two things have happened, right? Now the price of gas has gone up, and you did the next cardinal sin is you messed with one of the United States boats.
Yeah.
So Reagan says we're going to go in and start and fix this up. So they went in and sunk half the Iranian Navy in a day. All right, just to let Iran know we're not going to play with you anymore. Your ports are coming next, right? So Iran says, all right, basically we're going to back down, and then that night they decide to double down again and try to sink our ships with Silkworm missiles from China, right? And there'd been a big blowout about that earlier, and it was kind of written in stone as Iran, if you use Silkworm missiles, we're going to war that day. That's a tripwire. That's hard. That's in stone.
Yeah.
That's what the United States internally was set up for, right? Well, Reagan said, look, you made a mistake. He got hold of Iran. I'm going to forget that happened, and you're going to say that was a mistake, because if this comes out in the U.S. press, we're going to full-scale war with you.
Yeah.
I can't stop this. And Iran said, oh, okay, it was a mistake, begrudgingly, right? Quit using them. Everything finally settled down. They went to the World Court to try to get the United States to pay for it, because we shot up some oil rigs that were being used for military bases out in the middle of the Persian Gulf. Yada, yada, yada. That went on.
Now,
next thing that happens is the war finally comes to a truce. Neither one wins, right? Between Iraq and Iran. Now Iraq decides that we're going to take our military and take over Kuwait, because we don't want to have to pay Kuwait back for the debts we have, because now all of a sudden the price of oil dropped again, and they were losing money that they thought they had because the price of oil went up.
Right.
We go in because we're afraid Iraq's going to run into Saudi Arabia, right? Then you had Desert Storm that I was involved in and Larry was involved in.
And the thing with Kuwait is they, you just mentioned the oil, and everybody wanted that oil, and then what we found out is they started torching the oil wells and the oil drillings.
Yeah, when Saddam pulled out, he said, all right, look, if I can't have the oil wells and you guys are going to be pricks, right, I'm going to deny you the oil. And he just blew up all the wells. And it was a huge environmental disaster, right? And it took us, they thought it was going to take years to put those fires out. It eventually took months, but it was these big Roman candles you could see out there in the distance, for 100 miles. all over Kuwait. And Kuwait has always been a friend of the United States. They help drive down the oil. They're a small country. They have, a fair amount of oil, and they treated the West well. We still have people in Kuwait, all right? We still have Marines that go in and out of Kuwait regularly, that train in Kuwait, out in the desert. We have...
That's why we still have bases there, too.
Right, and these countries have become rich because of their relationship with the defense of the United States and the ability to sell their oil all over the world. It's not just the United States, right? It opens the world up for them.
Yeah.
So they've maintained a good relationship. They don't like us. We're frenemies to them, but we're profitable frenemies to them.
But who's not going to take money? Our enemies, they're like, oh, yeah, like Iran. They're not going to say, oh, don't send that pallet of money. No, they want it, but they hate us.
Sure, they hate us. And the more important thing is they realize that Israel has been very, very adaptive, right? It's their only place on earth.
Right. There's
no other backup place to go if something goes wrong. There's like 29 or 17 different Arab countries that a Muslim could go to, right? The Jewish faith has one safe place on the planet. It's not particularly safe. So they become very, very adaptive to the world needs, to markets. You get the idea. Well, Arabia realized, hey, we're gonna have to get rich and use our wealth to battle these guys, because they're using everything in the book, right? They've taken all the games that the world plays, all the Yahtzee and the battleships, and just everything, and they're playing all the games at once. That takes a lot of money. Well, they're going to do the same thing, right? And then here you have these Persians come in, and they start throwing the games at the walls. You got all your pieces spilling out on the floor, and it's upsetting the balance of power.
Yes. And
so it's okay.
So we get to Desert Storm, and we had Cheney that interfered and put us there in false pretenses. Now, and then when we left, that's when ISIS had shifted into gear. And when I found out with Iran, when we did that, they accused the United States of working with ISIS and giving money to ISIS and giving them all this equipment to go after them. I don't know if you knew about that. But it eventually all moved into Syria. So when it moved into Syria and Lebanon and Damascus, and ISIS went and not only destroyed Iraq, but then they moved in and they destroyed Syria. But that's when we start seeing Iran make a shift. And you could tell me if I'm wrong when I'm done. We had everybody over there. Every country was over there to try to stop ISIS and Iran proxies. That's the first I'd ever heard about it, or ISIL. And we were going to eradicate them. Now Trump, he said, "Oh, I got rid of ISIS." Well, he got rid of ISIS around our bases. And so now what we're looking at is, with this bomb that just happened, ISIS is the one responsible for it. And they're acting, I believe, on their own. I don't believe they're tied to Hamas or Hezbollah or any of them. I'm now starting to realize that ISIS is pretty much acting on its own. And it hates the United States. But then we have Iran with its proxies. And so when all of this is going on, we had Houthi jump in. We have Boko Haram jump in. So why not ISIS? Why not?
And then once we had ISIS, the United States jumped in and we eradicated their leadership and basically stomped on them. So they squirted out everywhere.
And you know where they went, William, was they all fled back to Well, they all fled back to Pakistan and Afghanistan. And
Well,
that's
yeah,
when I
and
started
Russia
realizing
did the same thing in Syria.
a bit.
Russia did the same thing in Syria, and basically put ISIL out of business, right?
Well, yeah,
For a
and
little
that's
while.
when I realized that ISIS was an offshoot of the Taliban and Al Qaeda. And what they did is they put them over to Pakistan to retrain and regroup, and they separated from them. I think because the younger um, uh, Al Qaeda and Taliban looked at the older leaders and said, "No, these guys are just too old. We're the young guns." And so they established ISIS, and they went on. And I truly believe, William, this is when Iran looked at ISIS and said, you know what? We need a Hamas, we need a Hezbollah. And all of these, and I'm saying all of this is rising up due to the weak administration we have. And I'm thinking that this is my own opinion, that ISIS seeing that Hamas is out there, Hezbollah is out there. Hey, why not? We're going to go over there and we're going to go after Iran. We're going to go after Syria. And with these bases being blown up, and us not really having a reaction or do go ahead and bomb everything like we had done in the past. These terrorist groups are now seeing a weakness, and they said, why not? Why not? And as we go, but we've done the history tonight, folks, and we've shown you that this is a war of the Middle East, as well as Israel. They've had a death to Israel forever. And
so it's political, it's military, it's spiritual, right?
Yeah.
It's psychological. It has all the components. We can explain some of those other personal type things that are going on later. But yeah, this is what we're seeing right now, and it's a political shift in power that they've seen, and not only they've seen, but they have to react to, because their neighbors will react to it first. They're forced into it. This isn't just their choice. This is being forced into a bad position.
Yeah. And the West, they always say the West needs to stay out of it. Well, yeah, in a way we do. I think it could have been Bush, I could be wrong, that said we just need to get out of this. We need to, and it wasn't Obama, because Obama did back out. But I believe the Bush and Reagan and the GOP that looked at this and said, you know what? This is a war of them, and we just cannot interfere. We can't keep interfering in this.
Right. So we need to let them work out their differences. As long as they continue selling us oil that's not too expensive, we need to just look the other way so they can settle their differences.
Yeah, and it's not up to.
There's no way we're ever going to sort it out.
No, because of the history and how far it goes back. And that's what maybe our viewers don't understand, or the West don't understand. It's not that, Israel's picking on the Palestinians just out of the blue. No, Palestinians invaded. And it almost like what Russia did. You don't see them sticking up for Russia. No, they're all for the Ukrainians. This is wars, or I should say hatred amongst the Sunni and Shiites, that it goes way back. And
so the Sunni and the Shia are not just national; they're multinational, right? So this is a religious civil war going on in Arabia across multiple countries.
Yeah. And so, folks, what me and William want to show you tonight is there is a history of this Middle East. And we never, I'm going to say we never should have stuck our toe in it. We didn't just stick our toe in it. We jumped with both feet in the middle of with Desert Storm. uh, on grounds of um, um,
The
uh,
price of oil. We had to go because of the
well,
price of
they
oil.
said it was because Saddam was killing his own people. Now that they did find um, chemical weapons and other weapons that they were poisoning the people with, but it wasn't about what we went over there for. It was a totally different reason. And if it was oil and if it was uh, them killing their own people, why the hell did we say we were going after Osama bin Laden? That's what I believed. And I was like, what's he doing in Iraq?
So
He's from
what
Saudi
happened was during
Arabia.
Desert
We're
Storm,
we're
Desert
gonna
Elly,
destroy Iraq over Osama bin Laden. That's what the media was telling us. And
so
now we understand that that's not what it was about.
it was personal about the Bush family because during Desert Storm, right after Desert Storm, Saddam said that he was going to have George Bush Sr. Killed. He was going to assassinate him. So
Mm-hmm.
when younger George became president and that administration that had to deal with that threat, they said, okay, look, we're in power again. Let's take the Saddam situation out. Let's just take out the Ba'ath Party altogether. We'll rebuild the country if we can. That'll be good. It will
Mm-hmm.
make the world power, the way the markets work and everything, be more continuous. It'll be good for everybody. Everybody will be happy about it. Let's do it. And they'd already had to bomb an Iraqi enrichment facility where they were going to try to make the
Uh-huh.
bomb, right? And so they came up with a reason to go. And instead of like Desert Storm using a big, huge military, because
Yeah.
remember George Bush Sr. right after Desert Storm, he reduced all the military bases. He cut the military. They were going to have the whole peace dividend thing. And then his
Yeah.
son comes in and he says, okay, look, we're not going to have as many forces. We're not going to fight them like we did the other way. We're just going to do this thunder run. We're going to send people up and just take out the Ba'ath Party before the Iraqis can react to it. And so they used more of a special forces type model rather than a heavy land warfare model
Yeah.
that Desert Storm had.
So really, folks, what we have went over tonight is to show you the history of the Middle East, and it explains why we seen the explosion that killed off leaders, that killed 100 people in Iran. Now today in Baghdad, we went after somebody, and I thought it was just this big old bomb in Baghdad, but it ended up just being a vehicle. They singled out one of the leaders. Um, and so we've eliminated them. But at the same time, it sure makes sense of why we're looking at our bases and other plants being uh, bombed by drone in Syria, Iraq. It makes a lot of sense because here we are interfering again. And that's how they look at it. They have always said it's the West, death to America. It's the West that keep uh, getting in what they're doing. And I'm
So
starting to
the
see
West
that
has
this
made
is
them.
what we're
The West
doing.
has made them rich. Okay, the West has made them rich, but they don't care about that.
Yeah.
They don't care if they're
They're going
rich
to
or
take
not.
our money.
What
You
they
know, we
care about
mentioned
is their
that
religion.
earlier, William. We mentioned that earlier. That, you know, they would fight no matter what. But, you know, here we step in and they're like, no, no, the West is evil. You called them frenemies. But, you know, hey, if they're going to give us a pallet of money, why not? It gives us more stuff. So they're not going to turn us away. And then that's where we end up putting ourselves in the middle of their war, centuries
We have
old
to
war.
stabilize the region or we have interruption of oil. And because like Biden decided to shut down the oil production in the United States. Now we're more dependent on that oil. Europe's far more dependent on oil because they're shutting down their reactors and their coal plants. And so somebody has to stay there and stabilize it. Russia's busy in the war, so who does that leave?
And see, get this though, William.
China's killing the leaders.
Is when Trump started producing more, we were self-sustainable, didn't have to depend on them, which would pull us out of this Middle East conflict that they have with one another. And they could
themselves.
That's it. And I think that was Trump's idea, but he never got a chance to complete doing this. He even sued the rocket man over there in North Korea, saying, buddy, you don't want to do this. And we had them at bay. He had us moving away from the Middle East. And who knows? Maybe Iran would have attacked Israel like it's doing now. Maybe not. But until we have to back up and be there as an ally for Israel, because me and you even talked about this. These people, when they're born, they are raised to hate Israel, hate the Jewish people, hate people in the United States. It's a it's bred into them over the years. And maybe their sons, their husbands, daughters are going to become soldiers, but every single one of them have a hatred for this country. And we can give them money.
We have to realize if you're from that area, there's good reasons for this. These aren't stupid reasons. The West thinks, well, their reasons are silly. They're not to them.
Not to them.
They're important.
Yeah, that's right. And so when we look at these migrants coming over from them, we have to realize they have a hatred for us. They were born that way. Yeah, it's freedom, and they're only coming here because they're told they could get, they're going to have a job, they're going to have a car, they're going to have food, they're going to get their own house, we're going to give them money, we're going to give them medical care. Who wouldn't go for that? But you'll never take out the hatred for Israel, Jewish people, and the American people. And that's what worries me, them flooding in our country with just men. That even the women will strap a bomb on them and go to a busy market and let it go off. And so
Elly and I will talk more about this in the future.
Yeah.
But this is serious business. This is not, it might happen. It's going to happen.
It's happening.
If we don't stay on it every minute.
It sure is. And it's not that Biden isn't doing anything. His administration is making us look weak. But if we actually got in a good president that was going to back out like Trump did, and granted, some don't want to see the coal plants and the drilling and the fracking. But if we don't do that and get self-sustainable, it's only going to hurt us in the long run. William, do you have anything final to say before we close? Because like you said, we got lots more on this we could talk about.
Energy is life-saving. It's not just life-saving for us, it's life-saving for our enemies. We can't just toss energy to the side if it keeps people alive. It's immoral. That's immoral. So that's my last statement, Elly. Thanks for letting me, contribute. This is my
having you jump aboard on a Thursday. So we had boy, you've been on 3 times this week. You're going to be ready to have some gravy with Miss Mickey and put your feet up for the weekend. I know I am.
Yeah, we're going to go roll around in the sand. That's what we're going to do.
Well, I'm going to get geared up and ready for trivia for tomorrow night. So yeah, the goats. Yeah, I got that goat thing happening. So anyway, no rats. Oh boy, William, I had nightmares about rats last night. Boy, I was on my feet out of bed and waking up going, oh, wow. Uh, anyway, folks, have a wonderful Thursday. Come on back tomorrow night for some trivia and, of course, the news. 3 shows tomorrow. Uh, tell your friends and family about our trivia, live trivia. We're the only ones on YouTube. I think we're the only ones on social platforms that does live trivia. So tell your friends and family about it and invite them to watch. Bring the popcorn. We thank you much for your support and subscribe and hit that like button. Throw those thumbs up for us. That helps us with kudos with uh, YouTube. They want thumbs up, folks. So the more we get, the more they're going to let us out there. William, I thank you so very much for being there tonight and this week. We had a lot of really important news and info to get to you guys. So I thank you dearly. You speechless on that, William?
Well, yeah, we're thankful we can get the information out so you can understand the world dynamics. You don't have to be afraid. Understand this is a process. It has rhymes and reasons. And if there's something going on you don't want to be a part of, it gives you an opportunity to step out of the way.
Yeah.
Right? It gives you power in your life for not just you, but for your family, for the young ones coming up. If you don't have the right information, and world events happen, you can get your children can get sucked into it. If you want them in it, that's great. You can get them prepared for it. If you don't want them in it and you want to move them aside, that gives you an opportunity as well. But you can't do it without the information.
Yeah. Okay, folks, we will see you tomorrow. Subscribe and hit that like button. And oh boy, we'll see you tomorrow and have a wonderful Thursday. And uh, once again, I thank Mr. William for being here tonight, and we will see you all tomorrow for trivia and also 3 shows. Grab one of them up. We got a little bit for everyone. All right, folks, we thank you, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.